this. It's not to go deep into any one of them. It's to give you a variety of ideas, but to apply these in your schools, there's going to be some work on your part to go back and think through it. So rather than me taking one thing and let's say spend all our time on this, what I wanted to do was come up with 4 or 5 different topics that can be used in the mathematics classroom to increase student understanding of number sense and comprehension. Now, what would help me though is this: how many of you are in the primary grades? Very good. Okay. How many of you are secondary grades? Okay. And then how many of you oversee math teachers? Okay. One thing I would tell you, I'm going to do the same thing I did in the main session. At the end, I'm going to give you a QR code and a link that has a folder with both the presentation and some of the documents that go along with this that dive a little bit deeper into the topic. Okay? So when you download that, feel free to use any of it you want. If you're going to do some workshop kind of things with your teachers, or you're going to do some PLCs or learning communities, I want you to do that. Really what I'm, oh, it's not even showing up here because I don't have it plugged in. That would help, wouldn't it? And let's see if the magic happens. There we go. Okay. We're going to look at a series of what I call routines. Routines can be used at any grade level, K up to 12. We're going to look at a variety of these routines, but really if you think about it, a routine is a sequence of actions that you regularly follow, okay? The great thing about routines is students can take ownership of that. Now, it's a simple word. All of you have a routine, don't you? Okay. You have a routine every morning when you get up on a school day? Okay. What time do you get up? 5, 6, okay. Partly it depends. Are there other people in the house that have to get ready, all those kinds of things. Now, once you do that, you have a certain set of things that you normally do every day. And when that gets interrupted, we don't like it. Then we have a different routine on the weekend. Okay? Some of us maybe get up at the same time, but what we do then to prepare for the day may be different. Okay? Some of us have an exercise routine. Oh, yeah. Okay. You're welcome. They're actually streaming these too, so we have people joining us by Zoom. I don't think I need a microphone to talk to you guys in this room, but I think it's helping them back there while they're doing that. But you know, some of us have an exercise routine, some of us have routines, what we do in the evening or when we get ready for bed, all those kinds of things. What routines do is they create stability and safety for us. They do the same thing for our students. Now, when we look at these routines, we're going to look at 4 different kinds. Now, just remember, I said, we're not going to go into real depth. We're going to look at some of them. But I want you to know these are all mathematically oriented. The first 3 are routines that we use with students. The last one, the 5 practices, are routines for the teacher. And we're going to look at each of these. I'm going to look at one other idea, if you guys don't mind, before we start. The biggest thing in the focus of these routines is helping students to start to gain number sense around what they're actually doing with the mathematics. Now, do you have, in my secondary people, do you have any students that can actually follow the formula or the idea of the math but really don't know what they're doing? So they can divide a polynomial into segments, but they don't really know what's happening to the numbers. And the same thing in elementary, we have students memorize their number facts, and that's a good thing. They need to know what 2 + 2 is and what 4 + 4 is, but we have a lot of students that have no idea then what that actually means in terms of the number. So when they get to a different type of problem, they can't relate to it because they don't have the number sense. Now, one of the things that can help with that is actually using modeling tools in order to help students gain understanding of an idea. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to give you an example of what I mean by this. Now, is anybody using Desmos? If you're not using Desmos, write that name down, D-E-S-M-O-S, okay? Anybody using GeoGebra? Okay, if you don't know that one, write it down. All those are modeling tools. Anybody old enough to remember Geometer Sketchpad? Yeah, okay. McGraw Hill owned Geometer Sketchpad, and what we did is turn it into a web version. So what I want to do is give you an idea, though, and then talk about how we use modeling tools to increase comprehension of what we're actually doing in math. Now, I think I mentioned to you guys, you know, I have a biology background and a math background. Kind of a weird combination, but, you know, that was my combination. And I was at a school for a while where we didn't have a physics teacher. So guess who got to teach physics? Okay? Because I had the math background and I was a science teacher, so you can teach physics, you know? And I had fun doing it. But what I recognize is the same thing I mentioned. I had the students who could do an acceleration problem and fill the formula and do all that. They had no idea what was actually happening with the physics, though, or what it meant to acceleration. So I want to start out just with an example. Now, most programs that you would use have some kind of modeling tool built in. But again, some of the ones that are out there, Desmos has some great modeling activities, GeoGebra has some great ones that you can use regardless of the program you're using. I'm going to show you one from 8th grade, okay? And in 8th grade, I'm going to take you over to this right here. And let me tell you what we're doing. We're introducing the concept of slope, okay? Slope of a line. So normally in a traditional class, when we introduce slope of a line, we would say, hi guys, we're going to talk about slope of a line today. And all of our students say, oh yeah, great, slope of a line, right? Is that what they say? No. They're like, slope of a line, what do you mean? Okay, what do you mean slope of a line? So in Reveal Math, when we introduce it, again, I'm using examples from what I know. So it's not about the program, it's about what we do. One of the things we do for that ugly question, why do we have to use this, when are we ever going to learn it? We actually start the unit of study out with a video. And that video has in it 3 different scenarios that relate to slope. One is an airplane taking off. Every one of our students see airplanes fly, and it looks at what that slope is when an airplane first takes off. Now, for many of our students, that's not so exciting. They see planes all the time, I don't really care. The second scenario we do is about the internet router in your house and what room you're in and what the strength of the signal is like based on where the route. And have you done that? Have you walked around the house trying to get a stronger signal because it's, you know, the phone? And really what we're doing, it's a direct problem related to what they're doing. Well, the distance to the router and the strength of the internet signal creates a slope of a line, okay? And then we do one scenario that, unless they go to the Dubai Mall, is it the Dubai Mall that has the ski slope in it? Mall of Emirates. So unless they go there and look at that, this one they won't relate to. But it's about the slope of the steepness of the hill and the speed of a skier. Okay? But really setting a scenario up. So one thing I would recommend that's a routine that you ought to follow is when we introduce a new topic, not every lesson, have some type of scenario video that actually shows the use of mathematics. You could look it up on YouTube, you know, in order to find something. So it doesn't have to be built in a program, but what that does right at the beginning is say to the student, there actually is some real world use of this mathematics. This idea then, the way that we use the modeling tools is we use them before instruction on the topic. Because the idea with a modeling tool is have the students play with the idea, develop some concept around what they're doing. Now let's introduce the formal math that explains what we just saw. Here's the reason that's so important. If you don't do that, and we introduce a topic like slope, okay? Students have nothing to connect the mathematical meaning to. And you think of some of the words we use in math. My primary teachers, what do we call the 2 numbers you add together? Add-ins. What do we call what you get? Who in the world came up with the word add-in? I want to know. Okay? Why can't we just call it the 2 numbers we're adding together? Think about division. What do we call those? Divisor, dividend, and quotient. So you think about those words we're introducing to our student that have no meaning whatsoever. And then it even gets worse, like if we think about fractions, numerator, denominator, who came up with those words? Why can't we just call it the top and the bottom? But really what we need students to actually start using the vocabulary in their discussions, because they're going to see the words when they get into the materials, and in the future they're going to see those words. So by helping them play with the idea first and then introducing terminology and concept, we give something for those words to stick to and have meaning with. Now I'm going to show you an example of this one. It's not anything particularly fancy, but developing concepts of slope. Here's our question. How can you demonstrate the concept of slope as you travel from one point to another on a coordinate plane? Now, you know what? Not an overly engaging question for our students, but when they get in this, they have to start playing. So I'm going to go to the next screen. We're not going to do this whole activity, but I want you to see it. I want you to get a feeling for the idea, okay? So in here, some of you would love this. How to use this sketch. How does it actually work? And I could click over the ideas, but you know, this one is not real difficult. Talk about it. Do you think this point, which is at 6, 6 in the first quadrant, will reach the target if we go up 1 and over 1 every time we take a step? Okay. Now, my mathematicians in this room, is it going to hit that point? If I go up 1 and over 1 every time I take a step, will I hit 6, 6? Some of you are shaking your head. Okay. So what the student's going to do, a lot of them won't know. They're going to look and say, okay, let's take a look at this. What do you think is going to happen here? Oh, we got it. Okay, by going up 1 and over 1, I got to 6, 6. Okay, that's kind of interesting. And then let's come over here. So we know that that 1, 1 actually got us there. What other values could I put in here when I take my steps to get to that target? So if 1, 1 worked, what else might work? Well, let's try that. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click and say, let's put a 2 in there. And then how about right here? Let's put a 2. Do we think that's going to work? Yes. Okay, so let's take a step. Yeah, you know what? That works. Now, we also know this, guys. We know mathematically 3, 3 is going to work. Yes. But I can see some of my students thinking, well, 2, 2 worked, and 1, 1 worked, and 3, 3 worked, 4, 4 ought to work, right? Then we do 4, 4 where they realize, well, that one doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? And then they'll get up to 6, 6, and once we get to 6, 6, we can't go any higher to do it. Okay, so we know there are 4 different opportunities if we're using whole numbers to actually get to that point. So they start looking at that. Okay, then let's go another step. All right. So we get them playing with the idea and realizing going up and over. And what do we actually call that mathematically? Rise over run. But you know, they're just taking steps right now. We're not worried about the words. So let's go to the next part of this. Now in this one, let's move the target. Let's not keep it at 6, 6. Let's try 4, 8, or 15, 6, or 8, 12. And actually I can grab the target. And I've got to come down a little bit so I can see my 12. And I can pull it over here at 8, 12. And then I can start thinking, I wonder what would get me there. Now, what's different now from what I did before? I'm not using I'm not using the same number. I have to start looking at differentiating in my mind. What could get me there? Okay. Now, I'm going to do this one the easy way. I'm going to put in here 8 and what? I'm going to put 8 and 12 in here. Okay. Now, will that hit the line? So let me take a step.
Yes.
Now, if I was doing this with my students, I would make them come up with 2 or 3 different ways to get to this. Yes. Because the easy one every time, once they learn it, is going to say, well, just go up to whatever the number is and go over that many. And they have to start doing it. Notice what we added on this screen, though. Let's take a look at the line then that actually goes through those points. And what we've done, we've transitioned from taking steps, actually starting without using the word yet, so looking at rise over run and how it matches the line. Now there's a couple, I'm not going to go into all these. They could do those 2 different numbers. Notice what we're going to do here. is we're gonna actually look at 3 different paths that would go from 8-12, starting at 0, 0. And then they're gonna start looking, how do those relate to each other? How does 6 and 4 compare to 3 and 2? Yeah, it's doubled, isn't it? Huh. You know what, if I look at this, if I double 6 and 4, I get 12 and 8. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Now, what if we mix it up a little bit? What if we put a couple negative numbers in here and go over to go to that quadrant, and then we're going to wrap this up by looking, you know what? Let's move the start point now. What if the start point's not at 0, 0? How does then that impact what happens with the slope? And we wrap this up. The final thing we do with this is answer the question. So how can we demonstrate the concept of slope as we travel from one point to another? What are we going to do after we do this activity? We're going to formally instruct them on slope of a line. The difference now in what we traditionally see happen in a classroom and what we just did, they had to play with this idea. Now when I start talking about slope, why could we still come up with steps up and over even when we move the point from 0, 0? Why does it still work? And what does the line look like? And when we put the negative number in there for the first number, what happened to the line? And so students start getting a grasp, but they've got something to connect the mathematical concept to. This is an example of modeling. Now, you can do modeling digitally like we just did it now. You can do modeling with manipulatives. How many times do we use counters with primary students? Okay? How many times do, you know what, one of the best things using place value is using, using 1 block and 10 blocks and being able to actually visualize. You know why we do that? Because we're modeling the mathematics visually. The younger the student is, the more concrete the example needs to be. The older the students get, the more they can start visualizing. But if you don't have the modeling, most of our students will not grasp mathematics. Most of us sitting in this room teach math because we like it. Okay? Do all of our students like math? No. No. One example, I have 4 children. Again, I know you're shocked. They're all adults now. Okay? My oldest 3 are girls. If I ask any one of my daughters, are you good at math? What do you think they tell me? No. No. They say no. But all of them went through all their high school math and did well. They all went to university. They all went through calculus at least and did very well. My youngest daughter did AP calculus in high school, got a 4 on the AP test. But all of them would tell me, I'm not good at math. And you know what they mean by that? They mean I don't like math. Yes. That's what they mean, because they don't see the context of the real world. You know what? If we can help students start visualizing math, and the strategies we're going to talk about today are all about removing some of that math fear, that's a real thing. Now, my primary teachers, one of the things I want you to know, if you're a building leader, one of the places some of that math phobia arises from is because some of us as teachers are a little bit afraid of math. And our students feel that, they feel that and think, oh, this is hard, this is difficult. But the more we can connect it visually and help them develop a conceptual understanding, the stronger they will be. The other one, though, I want you to think about, and there's a lot of different ways to find this, is at the primary level. This is grade 3. What I did is I opened up just a virtual manipulative kit. One of the problems we have sometimes, we don't have enough virtual or physical manipulatives to do the idea with the students. So if I look at this one, this is grade 3. What kind of tools do I want to use? Do I want to use arrays? Do I want to use base 10 blocks? Do I want counters or counter sticks or fraction circles? By the way, fraction circles are one of the best things you can use when you first start doing fractions, whether it's virtual. So when I click on this and say go, it's going to bring up my fraction circle. And now I can start manipulating. Do is pick one I want, bring it up on here. Now the only reason I bring this one up, that is still an example of modeling. It's just using either a physical or a virtual manipulator, okay, to do it. When you're doing that, best strategy, when you're introducing a new topic, is the best time to use the modeling tools, because it allows then the instruction to have something to attach to, okay? That's one routine I would look at, and regardless of the grade level. And if you don't know a good one, search, you know what? Good activity or conceptual development of whatever topic you're getting ready to do. And I tell you what, through Desmos and GeoGebra and some of the other sites that are out there, there's some great stuff. The other thing I would tell you with this, you can do these 3 ways. I could have every student individually be working with those materials, okay? Like this activity right here, I could have every student log into it, do it on their own. I could even do it as a flipped classroom if I have motivated students, okay? Personally, that's not my favorite way to do this type of activity. I think it's better done when it's students doing it together, because they actually hear the thoughts of each other working on it. So again, whether it's even physically or whether it's individually, that collaborative, but you can still those kinds of activities whole group, just make the students respond while you're doing it. Like when we were looking up here at the slope one, even if I don't have devices for students, but I can project it. So guys, on your paper, write down what numbers are going to get you to 6, 6. Okay? Everybody got it written down? Turn to your partner and show them, because you know why we haven't turned to the partner? To make sure they actually wrote it down. Turn to your partner, but it allows the other person to think, well, why did you do that? Why do you think this is going to hit? Well, let's take a look now. So I'm still building in the process of them developing that thought, all right? So one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing in the classroom is helping students conceptualize the math. The second one I want to go to is called sense-making routines. By sense-making routines, typically there's something that start a lesson. They're very quick, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Again, they can be done at any grade level, K to 12. What they do is allow every student to have an opportunity to enter that lesson and have a voice in the lesson. And remember, we talked about it. When you ask a question, how many students raise their hand? 2 or 3, okay? What these do is allow every student to have an opportunity. Now, I'm going to introduce a number to you. I'm actually going to start with this one. Okay, if you look at this little video, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So just for a second, think about it, watch it for a second. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Now turn to somebody next. You can tell them what you notice and what you wonder. Okay? Take a second to do that. Now, this is a dangerous question in this room because you're math teachers. What do you notice and what do you wonder? Oh, you were talking about it. Don't stop on me now. What do you notice?
So, the course, I got it to respect emotion, and then I was interested in this question, like, okay, what is the next capacity that you can evolve out?
See, this is why it's dangerous, because when you ask math teachers, they have all these mathematical answers for it. No, that's a great observation. What's the maximum capacity of this? We're interested in the science idea of what's the motion, and you know, how fast is it going? I wonder how fast it goes. Okay. Some of our students may ask questions like, I noticed the cars are different colors. Did somebody notice that? Okay, the cars are different colors. I had somebody yesterday tell me, well, there's all kinds of angles built into this. And I thought, yeah, you know, and it's just how our mind makes. Here's the idea though. The student that notices and says, you know what, I noticed all the cars are different colors. I don't know, did anybody notice it stopped every so often? It slowed down, it became still? I wonder if they're letting people on and off. I wonder how long it takes to get all the way around. Yeah. I wonder who gets on this, you know? But I also wonder, like, where is this? And all of those are valid wonderings, but what this strategy does, that's why in math class, a lot of our students don't want to answer.
Because they're thinking so long.
Yes, and what we've taught them to value is how fast can you answer the question correctly. I mean, that's typically what students think math is about. How quickly can I get the right answer? And you know what? That's part of what we want to do, but part of the math is learning how to find what the right answer is. And what this does is starts to take a little bit of that fear away from a student, that in math class, I can actually have an opinion. Okay? Now, I'm going to jump ahead. Let's do this one. This one is called Which One Doesn't Belong? All I want you to do really quick, don't think about it too much. Which number does not belong? Write it down. Don't shout it out, write it down, okay? Now, the strategy almost always with these, give the student a little bit of time to think about it on their own without anybody answering. Okay? Why do we want to do that? Because as soon as somebody answers, what happens? Thinking stops and, oh, yeah, okay. So in this one, did anybody pick 8? Why?
It's not a factor of
2 times 5.
It's not a factor of 10, because 2 times 5 is 10. Did anybody pick 2? Anybody pick 5?
Yes.
Oh, I got a lot of 5s. Why 5?
Oh,
it's
an odd number.
Because they are all divided by 2
Odd
and 5.
number and 2, 8 and 10, they are multiples.
Odd number.
Yeah, exactly.
What, did anybody pick 10?
Yeah.
Why?
Numbers.
2-digit number?
2-digit number, right? None of the other ones are 2-digit.
Also, it can be, it's the only number above 10, so the rest are all less than 10.
Yes, okay. The other one, you know what? 2 is the only one less than 5. I mean, the thing about this one, and when we get into a few of the other examples, I'm going to set the mathematical context for you, but the idea behind this is every student can have an answer.
And it's, you can
And,
justify the answer.
yes, and they can justify that answer, and it allows them, but the other thing it does, oh, you know what, I thought it was 5, I would have never thought of 10, that's interesting that you saw it that way. So, but the strategy generally, let the student think about it. Notice I had you write it down, and the reason I do that with students is because their answer is okay. Just because somebody else said 10, they don't need to change their 5 to 10. And it starts to develop a little bit of confidence in our students. And it helps us to see that we reason in different ways. There's not always one right answer. So that is a notice and wonder. These are really quickly, these are 5 different ones I'm going to take you through. We looked at notice and wonder. I'm going to show you a couple more of those. How are they the same? How are they different? Which one doesn't belong? Is it always true? Or why is it true? That's 2 versions of that one. And then the last one is a numberless word problem. Now the numberless word problem we typically use more in primary grades than we do in secondary. But I'm going to take you through and show you some examples of various grade levels of these different sense-making routines. They're specifically mathematically oriented. They're about number sense. Okay? So let me show you here. This one, we're getting ready in 3rd grade to go into a lesson, and we're starting multiplication. And we're looking at equal arrays. We're dividing things into equal groups. So the way we start this lesson, the sense-making routines are usually at the beginning of the lesson. What do you notice? What do you wonder? So guys, I'm not going to take you through the exercise, but I want you to think about this one. What do you notice and what do you wonder?
Yeah, I know they're divided in groups. I wonder if they're
I
the same
wonder how
way.
many groups.
Are they the same way? Maybe I wonder if they're the same number.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, same way or same number. Because typically you go to the store, they're going to divide things up. How am I going to pay? I'm going to pay by the number because sometimes it is. You can get 4 pieces. We can get 4 ears of corn at the store for, you know, whatever price. Sometimes it's by weight. So someone might think that. I'm wondering how many are in a basket. These are peaches, so I'm wondering in the US, did they come from Georgia? Because that's where they grow all the peaches in the US. Where do they come from? Chile, or, you know, where did they come from? That kind of thing. But I think you can see when we start looking at equal groups, how this is going to take the student thinking and directing them towards the mathematical concept we're looking at. Many of these are picture-oriented in primary school, because in media I can visualize. It doesn't mean they're not picture oriented at secondary level, but sometimes we're gonna mix it up. I'll give you some examples of this. This one, we're going into a lesson on fractions, okay? What do you notice, what do you wonder? Except this time we did a different routine. It's still notice and wonder, but tell me everything you can about this. It's still getting them to notice and wonder, but every day we're not saying, well, let's notice and wonder. Today, tell me everything you can about this. So what can you tell me about this one real quick? Different colors?
They're all in pairs,
Okay.
all colors are in pairs.
Yeah, doubles, every color's there twice. Looks like it's divided into equal pieces. How many pieces is it divided in?
8, so 2/8 each color.
Okay, and again, some students might say, I notice it's an umbrella,
It's a pattern.
okay? It's got a little white dot in the center. So you're gonna see things like that happen, and it's okay. Or I have an opportunity to voice something that I noticed about it that's gonna lead us directly into a discussion on fractions. Or two, what you saw, why you thought that, then let's discuss it as a group, okay? The other thing I would warn you about when you start using these, they should be a minimal amount of time. Because one of the things I've seen teachers run into is they're so excited the kids are actually talking that it goes 15 minutes. Well, if it goes 15 minutes, what happened to the rest of my lesson? I just lost the 10 minutes of instructional time I need, okay? Let's throw some, this is out of high school geometry. What do you notice, what do you wonder? And we're getting ready to go into a lesson on transformations.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things that you can notice and wonder about this. Some students will wonder, they look like they're all the same shape, right? I wonder if the one on the bottom is actually the same shape. How would I know?
I checked the grid itself and I counted. So
Yeah.
it's the same, it's a reflection.
You can do it that, right? And that's exactly. But that's where we're headed, but for some students, they're gonna have to look at that a minute and think, you notice line M? Why doesn't it go from corner to corner? I wonder about, you see point O?
Yeah.
Point O looks so lonely. Why is point O up there? And really, I think you see where this is going. I'm not looking for them to come up, comprehend the math. This is different than modeling. It's a strategy to get them talking about the math and engaged in the lesson, okay? So this is an example of one. When you think about notice and wonder, here are 3 different ways you can do notice and wonder. Tell me everything you can. What questions could you ask? If we don't want to make it about you, what questions could there be about this? But it's different ways to ask the same thing. It's just, what are you seeing about this? Let me show you a couple different ones. By the way, these are all in the handout. The other thing, this is a great exercise to get with a group of teachers teaching the same grade level or subject you are, and say, let's take, you know what, let's take this next chapter, and out of the 5 lessons, how could we come up with one for each lesson? Which one doesn't belong, notice and wonder, that kind of thing. Now, one of the deal, we have actually an author named Dr. Raj Shah. He is co-founder of the Global Math Project. All of his research and work has been around student curiosity and engagement and math mindset. And he actually starts our units out with this making routine. So in this one, Hector and his sister each made a glass of chocolate milk. Hector put more powder in his glass than his sister did, but she said that her sister had her milk has a stronger chocolate taste. What do you notice? It's combining kind of those ones. What do you notice? What questions could you ask? Topic going into ratios. So one of the things we all first notice as mathematicians is I can't answer the question. Really, there's not a question. I don't know whose milk is stronger. But what can I notice? Well, I can notice, looks like the same size glass.
Yes.
I can notice he has more liquid in his glass than she does.
Yeah.
They look about the same color. But what questions could I ask? That's why it's so important in this one. Well, how much milk is in each glass?
Yeah.
And really what, as we, the idea behind this one, and by the way, this one with the teacher notes for it are in the folder. It's an idea of taking this and making it broader. With this one, we started at the beginning of the unit, because then when we're going through the lessons, did we discover anything yesterday or today that would help us ask questions about what we need to know? And it extends that opportunity to have student have voice. So in this one, it's a problem that we don't know the answer to, and the real point behind it is what do I need to know in order to actually solve, okay? This is the full student piece on this one. This is longer than 5 minutes, by the way. It's an exercise or kind of a performance task we do at the beginning. These are the teacher notes. Both of these are in the folder. So if you want to try this out or get an idea of an extended one, let's throw a couple others in. How are they the same? How are they different? Again, 3rd grade lesson, we're going into fractions. How are they the same? How are they different?
They're all divided into 4.
Okay.
But the pieces are not equal. Not all of them have equal pieces. So the one on the left and the one on the right, and the pieces are not. Showing 2, yeah.
Okay. What about something back? What's something else? How are they the same or how are they different?
All of them are circle.
Very good. They're all circles.
And then divided into
Only
4.
one, yes, only one is representing fractions. but
Okay.
others-
What's the
Only-
thickness of each
Only
one?
one has equal parts, right?
Yes,
And actually, this lesson is going into dividing things into equal pieces.
pieces.
Now, the other thing I would notice, and I'd ask my class, okay, if these were pizzas, how many of you like pizza? Okay, which one would you want a slice of?
I want the one, the middle one.
No, the first one on the left with the biggest.
Well, if I want the biggest piece, I want a slice of this one,
Exactly.
okay? Yeah. But it's just fun. Now, I want you to notice, just even in our group, why we do this where we let the student think, then they talk to each other, then we talk about it whole group. Because what happens when I ask the question to the whole group?
I drag them to
A
discuss.
few people answer it and a lot of people don't answer it. Because it's just how group dynamic works. Once somebody else speaks up, then other people are gonna be quiet. So that's why we always use it in the routine. Let's take a look at this one. Which one doesn't belong? Think about it, okay? And then I would have to turn to, but we all know, which is the obvious one?
6 times 8.
Yeah, because we're looking at squares.
Yeah.
This is where this lesson is going,
Yes.
but I could say, you know what?
10
4 times 4.
10 times 10.
You know why 4 times 4? It's the only number less than 40.
Yeah.
10 times 10, why 10 times 10? Only
2
2-digit numbers, okay? This one is a high school one for algebra. We're looking at exponents, exponential functions. That's where it's going. The students don't know this yet. Okay, which one doesn't belong?
C.
As mathematicians, the obvious one for us is right here.
Yeah.
Because n is not an exponent, but think about how many students would pick this one.
The fraction.
Because it's a fraction.
But it's a great way to start having the discussion. This is a numberless word problem, okay? This is actually 1st grade, looking at subtraction. And in this one, some apples are on a tree. A horse ate some apples are left on a tree. So as my 1st grade students, I want you to draw the 2 trees. So think what they have to do. Okay? Which tree is the before tree? And which tree is the after tree? And you know what they're doing? They're conceptualizing subtraction. So, okay, I'm gonna put this many on the 1st tree. Okay, how many go on this tree? How many did your horse eat? And think about visually, in number sense wise, what they're doing with this. This is again a high school geometry. And the reason I'm putting these different ones up here, I just want you to realize that you can do this at any grade level. This one is called Why Is That True? It goes to why is it always true, or this is true, is it true? Okay, why is this one? So let me read this because it's pretty small print. But what it says is, here are 2 circles with centers A and B. Based on the diagram, explain how you know that each statement is true. Now notice, I'm not asking them if it's true. How do I know it's true? So the first one, the length of segment EA is equal to the length of segment EB.
So the distance between EA and EB and
It's
EA
common,
is the
it's
same,
common.
because the line in the middle
Yes.
is divided.
Yep.
That's
You know what's making me smile though? We want to answer it right.
Yes.
I want to get it right, you know, and that's why we've got to give the students time. But this is a great one. They've really, some of this they've already done, and now we're getting to go into a lesson that expands it. So it's not like they don't have any knowledge whatsoever. But again, a great way to introduce it. In high school, a lot of times, middle school and high school will use this. It's just called a number talk, math talk. A lot of us use something like this as a warm-up, but the difference is using it to allow students to think about it, to discuss it with a partner, and then to bring it up. So in this one, notice what happens with some of these as we go down. We start out that first one. For most of our students, the first one is fairly easy.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I know, oh, 40, 40, if I take both of the way, then n is negative 8. Okay?
And that
The next one gets a little more difficult.
is 100.
Right, but for a lot of our students, okay, if I remove the 25 and 25, that little negative symbol by the end, I know, but they struggle with that.
Yes, yes.
That's an interesting one. The one with the fraction, that's another one that throws them. But really, that's why it's just mentally. I don't want you to solve it, don't write it down, work it out, just mentally what you think it is. And this is the reason, again, we haven't talked to a shoulder partner. What did you get? Oh, how did you get that? Why did you put it that way? Okay, and then we come down to the last one. Now, that initial set we just looked at are called sense-making routines. They start a lesson, they allow some freedom for the students to think, make a choice, have discussion. We discuss it as a whole group. They tend to lead right in the lesson, okay? We call them sense-making routines. If you look up sense-making routines in mathematics, I put some material in the folder that kind of goes into these, but really it's a great exercise for you and your fellow teachers to say, let's look at the next chapter and let's see how we could embed these at the beginning of the lesson, just to see and get our students talking. I will tell you the first time, and when you first start doing these with students, don't expect the discussion just to jump out there, okay? You guys don't have any problem doing this, but our students are so used to not saying anything that don't do it a couple times and then give up because they're not talking. Give them a chance to realize, oh, I can actually answer this. They're gonna let me think about it for a minute. What did I come up with? Why did I do that? Okay, what did my partner think? And then do it. But I would tell you, they're great routines to do this. Now, what we did with these in our Reveal Math program at K-5, every lesson starts with one of these. Okay? It's just how we start the lesson, but it's based on research. The second set, and I'm going to run through these really quick, guys. Again, my goal today was not to go into depth with any of these. It was to make you aware of them. Hopefully, if you're not using some, then you'll look and say, okay, I want to get with my group and get together and do a little research into this. Number routines are about fluency. That's really how they're used. They don't necessarily start a lesson. I can actually use them anytime during the day. Now, in primary grades, it's a great way to start the morning. It's a great way if they come back from lunch, and I know your days are a little different than ours, but it's a great way when they come back from recess or a special to actually get them started back on the track of thinking. Normally in our secondary classes, we have them for a period. So it's a great way, let's say we finish talking about the lesson, but before they start working on practice problems, let's do a little bit of fact fluency. Okay? There's different strategies you can use to do these, but it really builds the sense around the numbers that they're working with. And I'm gonna let you go back and read this, but really it builds deeper understanding about the numbers and how they relate together. So there are, in the folder, there are like 8 different, I think there's 8, let me click over here. No, there's actually 12 different routines that I introduced to you, okay? Each one, what is it, what's the purpose, and I give you an overview. So we're gonna look at a couple of these. These are the first ones, about how much, break it apart. Can you make this number? Math pictures, what do you see? What's another way to write it? This will make more sense when I show it to you. Find the pattern, make a pattern. What's the pattern you see? Greater than, less than. Let's count, where does it go? What benchmark, or what is it closest to? We say benchmark just which, you'll have several things on there. Where is it closest to? Okay? You can actually give the slope of the line and what quadrant is it in. Okay? Is another example of that one. Would you rather? What would you rather? So what about this one? This one we're looking at adding multiple digit numbers. So would you rather have the pennies in A or in B? Tell me guys, which would you rather have, pennies in A or B? 50, 50, and 400, or 200 plus 200? Don't add it. Okay. Just in your mind, which would you rather have? Well, it depends. Do I want the most money, or do I want to carry around the least amount of pennies? But if I want the most money, I want A. And then typically what we do, we have a number of these in a row that they need to do. So like with this one, which would you rather have here? Would you rather have 440 plus 10 or 300 plus 275? What about this one? And again, the strategy behind this, the way we do it is the same way we would do it with the sense-making routine. Let the student think about it. Let it talk to somebody else. What did you decide? What's good is over. Again, this doesn't take long, but allows us to go through it. About how much? Okay. About how much? By the way, you can do this in algebra. You can do it in geometry. I mean, the figures that we're looking at, greater than, less than. I put two quite greater, which is greater than, less than. Yeah, but this one, it's interesting to me because most of us would round this to what number?
900.
900, right?
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, our students might not do that because we're not telling them what to round it to, are we?
Yeah.
Normally we do a problem, we tell it to round it to a certain place value.
Yeah.
Here, it really gets the student thinking about number sense and what do these numbers mean. These actually kind of, are approximately 900, we know that. But if we get into something like this, this actually becomes a little more difficult.
Yeah.
What would you round this to? Some of our students would round to the nearest 100. And when they start talking to each other about it, what comes out of this is, what does place value mean? How do I round to a specific? Why did I round to a certain place value? Okay? So these are three different ones. Decompose it. This is one of my favorites. Decompose that number in three different ways. So this one I'd like you to try. Don't share it with each other. On the paper in front of you, decompose 549 in three different ways. Don't say it out loud. Those of you that are zooming in, you should be writing it down right now too, not sitting back and just waiting for them to do it. And then when you have all three ways, just put your hand up and down for me, okay? So I can see that you've got it done. Now, somebody at my middle table right here, okay? What was the first way that it came to you to decompose this? Of what? Given which factors?
9 times
3
61.
and
9 times.
yes. I started with 3 and 183.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
By place value.
Okay, so you came up with what?
540 plus 9.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So a lot of us, we would normally, that was interesting. But this is the thing that comes out of this, is you know what? They're going to do it all different rate. And the reason we make them do it 3 times is because they have to think, how would I do this differently? Now, normally, no, the other thing that comes to my mind, it's just weird. When I see the 3 different times, I almost think in my mind, I need 3 different pieces when I break it down. Notice it doesn't say that. I don't know why in my mind it says I need to do, and the one that comes to me just like you, the first one I do is 549.
Yeah.
Some of your students will do something like this. 548 and 1.
Yes.
And then 547 and 2, because why? That's how they count. And what we want to do is steer them away from that to look at other options to decompose it.
Yeah.
This particular problem right here is great for number sense to know what place value actually means
Yes.
when they have to start breaking it out. Okay, this is another decompose it that's a little bit different. So again, decompose it 3 3/5 in 3 ways. You don't have to do it just because of the time, but immediately, what will most students do with that first number?
Three times additional, 3 times additional.
Most immediately, the first one they'll do is 3
Plus
3/5. And then they'll do it typically one of 2 different ways. 2, 1 3/5, or some will do 3 1/5 and 2/5.
Yes.
But again, it just helps in breaking apart, okay? These are the different types of number routines that exist. They really help students develop fluency around the ideas that they're working with. That's why you'll see a whole variety of these. Again, one of the things we do, actually in Reveal K-12, in K-5, we actually call it a number routine. In 6-12, we call it a warm-up. But it's an opportunity for students to work on fluency, okay? Now, I'm going to throw one other out here. This one we don't really have time to go into. Most of you, if not, it's got to be all of you. If you're not, tell me. But how many of you are working with students who English is not their first language? That's what and in the States now, every single classroom, we're working with students that English is not their first language, okay? Right now, the student population of English as second language is about 20%. They're estimating by 2030, it will be like 35% of the students in our classrooms will be English as their second language. You think about what we're doing with that. We're introducing mathematical concepts, which, number one, even in the native language, many of our students struggle with. Number two, we're introducing English words. And number three, we're introducing mathematical vocabulary. Yes, so for an ESL student, they're dealing with all 3 of these at once. So Stanford University did a lot of research around strategies that would help students acquire mathematical language and use it effectively both in written and verbal format. So there are 8 strategies. I'm going to click ahead a couple slides to this. These are the actual 8 strategies. In the folder, I have a document that describes the strategies in different ways they can be used with students. Okay? They are not something that's separate from a lesson. It's something you do during a lesson while students are working on an idea. I'll give you one example. These are the 8 different ones. We actually integrate these into our program. You don't need our program to use them. You can use them whatever program. It's a strategy that we're using. So let me just talk about stronger and clearer each time. In this idea, we're having students describe something that happens mathematically, but we want them to do that description. First of all, they create it. You notice this first one, successive pair shares. So on my own, I'm going to describe this, whatever the mathematical concept we're working on. It could be something as easy as what steps did I take to come up with this answer? It could be an addition problem, could be breaking down a polynomial. What steps did I take to do it? And they have to describe it. Okay? Could be written or oral. Then what I'm going to do, I want you two to do a think pair share. How did you do it? How did you do it? Take that, combine it into one answer that really does a more effective job of describing that. And then what I want you to do is I want you to get with this pair here, take your two and actually make it a clearer description using the mathematical language. Then as a group, we're going to listen to what everybody came up with. But they're given the opportunity to think about and revise their idea. The second one here is the same thing. It's still stronger and clearer, but it's called convince yourself a friend, a friend or a skeptic. So if you had to give a idea around why you came up with this solution, if you were just telling yourself, how would you say it? And then if I had to describe it to you, and you're my friend, how would I tell you? And then you don't think my idea is right, how would I say it to you? Because I would actually say it differently. What it does is it forces the students to actually use the language and clarify how they're using mathematical concepts. So all I wanted you to do with this one is know that they're out there. Take a look at them. I put some of the definitions. If you went on and Googled mathematical language routines, you would get 100 different hits, actually more than that, of work and then examples of how this is used. So it's just good strategy to help our language learners to do that. You're going to see there are 8 different ones, okay, with different ways to use each one mathematically. So Sophia wants some tickets. How can Sophia find out how many tickets she has? You can arrange the tickets in 3 rows of 5. This looks like a typical problem, right? That's what it is, okay? Skip count each row by 5s. Then there are 15 tickets. Now notice with this one, pair the students and ask each one to work on their own and write about how skip counting can help them find the total number of objects. So they have to actually describe how skip counting works. Then we're going to put them in a pair, then we're going to put them in another pair. But they're using the mathematical language. I'm going to skip that one there. I'm going to end with this. This is one we're going to end. Okay? 5 practices. Okay? Is this one for students? This is for teachers. And it's based on this book right here. The 5 practices for orchestrating productive mathematical discussions. You can get it on Amazon. It's from the National Council of Teacher Mathematics in the United States. Let me just describe what the 5 practices mean. These are practices, like if we start having students do these things, if they're doing modeling and working in groups, if we're using the sense-making routines to start a lesson, if we're using the number routines, there's a lot more student talking with each other going on, isn't there? So these 5 practices are about making the most of student discourse. Here's all they mean. If I have the students working on something, anticipate what they might say correctly or incorrectly. So think about it before you do the activity. What am I expecting to hear? Monitor the conversation. So the best way to do that is to be moving around the room while they're having the discussion. Number 3, select certain statements students made that really stood out to you. Like you did it by factors when we did the one. That was interesting because most students wouldn't start with that. So it's like, well, you know what, you did this, but can you share how you came up with that? So I'm thinking about certain statements that made it I want everybody to hear. Sequence them in a logical order. So I want to make sure I have those statements come up that it builds the knowledge. And then lastly, connect it to the math context. It really takes just this ordinary discussion and really builds knowledge from it. Now, to be honest with you, the 5 practices could be used in any classroom, in any discussion, but they work really well with mathematics. So if you're looking, you know, if on your weekend this weekend, you're gonna go to the beach and you want a light book to read, this is not it. Okay? But if you want a really good book about mathematical pedagogy, this is it. The other one that they've done that I think is really powerful for math teachers is called Principles to Action. That one's not in the handout. If you want to jot that one down, Principles to Action. It's about the 8 effective teaching practices for mathematics. It's another great read. This here, well, actually any of these, but this would make a great professional development that you do with teachers for the first half of the year. And actually then introduce the practices, start looking at how we implement it in the classroom and discussions about how is it impacting discussions around. But all of these we looked at, sense-making routines, number routines, math language routines, this would make a great professional development material for you for the next 6 months or 2 years. Yes, Principles to Action, okay, is the book. So the last thing we need up here is this, right here. Feel free to take a picture. If the QR code, by the way, the easiest way to do it is to take this and just type that into your computer. But you can also use the QR code. In the folder, you'll have the handout of the PowerPoint material. Secondly, you'll have 3 or 4 documents that relate to the sense-making routines and the math language routines and so on. And then that one activity about the milk, the chocolate milk, the student and the teacher version is in there to support you. So I went over a few minutes. Lunch is not going to go away, it's out there. But I just want to say, you know what, thank you so much for the attention today, for the participation. Did you get one, and this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Did you get one thing out of today that you could think about using in your school or your classroom? Okay. Then it was worth our time to be together. It's a privilege for me to be with you. I can just spark ideas, you know. Oh, I didn't do the one thing I got to do, guys, before you leave, all right?
Picture.
Oh yeah, I want to get your picture.
Okay.
Because you know why I want your picture?
Why not a
Because when I go back home and I'm with my colleagues, the people in the UAE are so beautiful compared to the people in the US. I want to make sure they realize that.
With you.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
You ready to flip it around? Okay, here we go. Okay, thanks guys. Lunch is out here. Please enjoy yourself. They always do great food. In the US, we would be having Subway sandwiches, okay? Here, they're gonna have a nice meal for you. We appreciate you being here. If there are questions you have, please let us know. And then, you know, if you're looking at resources, please look at some of the McGraw Hill things we have out. The principles we talked about today are not McGraw Hill principles. They're good pedagogy. But those are the kind of pedagogy that we've built in our math products in order to support student learning. Okay. So thanks, have a great day, enjoy lunch. Okay. Thank you guys. And those of you that joined us by Zoom, thank you, and hopefully you can do the same thing. Anybody need this? Yeah, I'll leave it up there for a minute.